they call it, Carroll County, and Darren's got some things to do over there. We're going, okay. All right, we're gonna call this, special meeting of the Holiday Island City Planning Commission to order. It's, February 15th at, 5 p.m. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Secretary Dumas here, Commissioner Elwood here, Commissioner Graves here, Commissioner Mills
here,
Vice Chair Pittman here, Chairman Keys
Here.
all present.
I declare a quorum. Any discussion on the agenda?
make a motion, we approve the agenda as prepared.
Ken made a motion to approve the agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
Linda seconded it. Any further discussion?
Where am I?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda is approved. Lynn had distributed a lengthy minutes from the February 8th meeting. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
The distributed.
Do I have a motion?
I make a motion, we approve the minutes of February the 8th.
Ken made a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Jerry seconded it. Any discussion?
It was pointed out I misspelled Commissioner Elwood's name, so I fixed that.
Okay.
You mean Elwoody?
I didn't notice that.
I think it was Elwood.
Elwo?
Close enough. Hey, there's a whole lot worse.
Commissioner Elmo.
Elwood.
All right, no further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved. No reports at this time. Under old business, review the last zoning regulation changes. Lynn has distributed them. They're highlighted in red and yellow.
Yeah, most of them are in yellow. The first revision we made last time we met was on page 8 in the definition of dwelling, a two-family duplex. We added to the end of that definition, and having no common interior connection between the units. So that is needed to do that. Page 17 was the next change, where we talked about and decided to add a new zone called RW.
I think, aren't there some duplexes that have separate owners on the island?
They do, by our definition, that would be a townhome. If they're talking about the land.
Yeah, I know. But they got some really strange things out there. But that doesn't mean what we want.
Correct. So page 17 is where I added the title RW Rural Wooded, and then that carries down onto page 18 is the next change. In the zoning district boundary map, I made reference to the zoning map table in 3 different places in that section, section A, section B, and section C. It's because the zoning map is a representation of what we think the zones will be, and we're going to rely on that table to be the precise definition of each lot and property or parcel.
It's down to the lot level.
Yes.
Within a unit? Or?
Yes. The table has that kind of distinction.
I saw that today, but I did not dwell within it.
And the next change is on page 18 also in the 14.6.04, the interpretation of the boundaries. And so that's where I added the words, in the first sentence it says, where uncertainty exists as to the boundaries of districts shown on the official zoning map, the addition says, together with all explanatory data thereon in the attached zoning map table. So there's data on that map that was drawn, and there's some text in the upper right hand corner that says that you have to refer to the table for the precise information. Next edition was on page 28, and pages down where defined the general description of what rural wooded district zoning means. we put in here that the RW zone, rural wooded parcels with a minimum acreage of 10 acres that are primarily undeveloped woodlands. It's short, but it describes what the general description is. Any questions or discussion on that? Okay, and below that in dot 11 was the zoning uses. Permitted timber, hunting, single-family residence, hobby farming. Well and septic are allowed. No commercial uses are allowed. Multiple housing units per parcel are prohibited. So that's how that RW zone will be zoned to be used. Questions? Okay. On page 31 in section 14.12.03, the procedure for authorizing, and it has to do with the application. We had some discussion about referencing that table when we talk about appropriate fees, so I inserted in that first long sentence in A, set forth in appendix 1430-01. That's the appendix for fees. In page 37 in 1416.07, manufactured housing units, long discussion that continued for several meetings about age and condition, and we decided to add this text. All used manufactured housing units must pass an inspection provided by the owner to ensure compliance with the federal standards.
It doesn't really.
First time I read that, I wasn't sure if that had some wiggle room for who they can use to do that.
That was my question.
Or what is the standard
Well,
of the inspection process?
Yeah, the legal standards are set forth. We don't want to reiterate those, but does that mean I can do it? And I mean, you see what I'm not sure that that's tight enough as far as who could actually do the inspection. But I don't know how you reword it differently.
The inspection standard is in the standard.
Yeah, but who does it?
It's in the standard.
Oh, it's in the standard that it has to be provided.
Right.
But I mean, all right, let's say you get somebody, you know, Joe Blow to do it, and he presents us a documentation that met standards.
No, but what they're saying is that within the standard, it says.
In the standard, it says the inspector has to be approved by.
Unless we put some credentials to who does it, I mean, how do we know that, who can we trust to compare what was done to the standard?
Because they would have to demonstrate as part of the standard that they were authorized to do the inspection. I didn't want to start just copying the standard into our ordinance.
There's a federal standard that
Yeah, that's what,
right.
you know,
That-
in that federal standard, we say they have to be in conformance with the federal standards. And in that federal standard, it says who is authorized to do the inspection.
Some sort of a credential that they have to carry.
Yeah, I mean, it would be, admittedly, it would be for the building, it would be incumbent on the building inspector to know that,
Okay, that's
to know that much about the federal standard, that you can't have, you know, Willy Wonka do the inspection and present a report. It has to be somebody that's authorized to do the inspection.
Willy Wonka's dead.
So, anyway,
No, I had the same, yeah, I think that.
I think we're covered.
I think we're covered until we find out we're not, then we'll change it.
Change it, yeah.
Okay. And then on page 59, that was the tables for the appendix for the setbacks and those kinds of things. And last meeting, I noted when we were going through it that I forgot two footnotes, the two notes, the block empty and the block with a V in it. Well, in my updating of this document, I discovered two more footnotes that I missed, because in the headings of those appendixes, there's a *1 and a *2. Those are pointing to these footnotes that I've added. Footnote 1 would say zero lot line setbacks may be utilized to permit common walls between attached townhome dwellings subject to an applicable building and fire codes. Fire code regulations may require greater setback distances. So that section, that note is on setbacks for, in R2s. Then in R3, I believe that's where the setback is, yes, for note number 2. Setbacks for development in R3 may vary when adjacent to triggering property based on section 142105. The triggering properties are listed to be property zoned R1, R1M, and R2, as well as property occupied by a single family dwelling unit. So there's discussion in 1421 in our text that says if you're going to do this activity in R3, there's certain things that have to take place before we can permit it. So the setbacks may be different, or the lot width might be different. Any questions about those footnotes?
Nope.
And on page 60, that was the footnote about commercials. It had a reference to a number 2. Setbacks for developments in R3 may vary when adjacent to triggering property. So I copied the same sentence there. Or that was, yeah, that was commercial, I believe. That's the extent of our changes.
And all of those are incorporated into the latest
Yes.
version that's been distributed.
Yes, the one that I put on the internet, I renamed it to, other than this, I took out the heading for the header, I took out the footer, took out all the page numbers, and so it looks like municipal code.
Now, that updated one version now, does that have to go to Justin?
It's already, I sent it to him, I don't know, probably over the weekend, or maybe
We're gonna
today.
wait till he reviews it before we pass it then, or what?
We're gonna do the first reading tonight, and that'll give us 3 months basically for Justin to do his thing, and.
The order of business is for us to recommend it to the city council.
Right.
In a resolution.
Right.
Okay.
And I said we're gonna approve it tonight, I meant in the city council meeting.
Okay.
All right, so that covers old business. Now we can move on to new business, which is considering the resolution. So,
It's under the clips.
with the
Yeah.
agenda.
That's the resolution.
Yeah, I know, I was just looking for the agenda, but, all right. We will now consider, the next thing on the agenda is considering resolution HICPC R22-002. Lynn, you want to read the resolution?
Well.
And we're just going to read the resolution, we're not going to read Title 14
Oh, really?
in its entirety.
Damn.
Okay. Resolution HICPC R22-002, a resolution adopting Title 14 zoning in order to clarify zoning regulations, establishing fees and penalties for violation thereof, and for other purposes for the city of Holiday Island. Whereas pursuant to ACA 1456-416, the Holiday Island City Planning Commission, HICPC, has determined it necessary to develop zoning regulations for the entire area of Holiday Island to provide districts of compatible uses for unified development, for the elimination of non-conformance, and for other matters of general welfare of the city. And whereas the City Council adopted Ordinance 2022-002, titled Establishing the Holiday Island Board of Adjustment on January 18, 2022, that is pursuant to ACA 1456-416, Section B1 and following. And whereas the HICPC now finds it to be in the best interest of the citizens of Holiday Island to recommend to the City Council Title 14 zoning regulation in its entirety, including the zoning map, the zoning map table, and specific text from Ordinance 2022-002 to better provide for the clarification of terms and uses for zoning. Now be it resolved by the Holiday Island City Planning Commission, Section 1, that the attached Title 14 zoning, the zoning map, and the zoning map table be recommended to the City Council of Holiday Island for adoption. Section 2, that the attached ordinance shall be considered by the City Council of Holiday Island for adoption. Passed and approved by the Holiday Island City Council Commission, City Planning Commission, Holiday Island, Arkansas, on this 15th day of February 22. Attached to this document are the 60-some pages of the text. I have it in reduced format, so it's physically attached. I have a 2-page version of the map attached. It's folded in half. And beyond that, we have 5,232 lines of table attached. Looks like that. So technically, it's attached. Those documents are available for viewing online, so they're sort of read from there.
Okay. At this point, I'll entertain a motion to approve resolution HICPC R22-002, and if we get a second, I'll open for discussion.
I'll make a motion.
Pat made a motion to approve the resolution. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Linda seconded it. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Commissioner Dumas, aye. Commissioner Elwood,
Aye.
Commissioner Graves,
Aye.
Commissioner Mills,
Aye.
Commissioner Pittman,
Aye.
all in favor.
Okay, the motion approved, or the resolution is approved and will be passed on to the city council for consideration.
But it probably will pass.
All right,
I have just a feeling, straw poll.
Looking for your agenda.
I don't know what I did with my agenda, but,
Here's one.
I got it here. It was right on the back side of it. Okay, so that covers all the new business.
Yes, sir.
Any public comments? Anybody on Zoom?
Nobody's on the.
Okay. Commissioner comments? Hearing none,
You wanna say-
scheduling,
You gonna say yay? Amen.
next regular meeting. I guess I can make a commissioner comment. Thank you once again, Lynn, for this huge and monumental task that you have. You've eaten the elephant for all of us.
Well, it took each of
One
you
piece
to
at a time.
took each of you to work on it too.
All right. Next regular meeting will be March,
In a few minutes.
No.
No.
Regular meeting of the-
Oh, the
of
capital.
the
planning.
planning commission.
I just want to pull up the calendar.
We've done this before, but
See, did we move those to 1 o'clock or 3 o'clock?
we've been having them at 1, but.
Yeah.
March 2nd Tuesday is March 8th.
And if we have bylaws that say we're gonna meet at 9 o'clock or some other time,
I think it was
we would rather do it at 3, we should probably bring that up in the next meeting and,
Well, you wanna do it at
Change
3
it.
then? I don't care.
so we can post our real meeting time on the website.
It does say 3 o'clock on the website.
You wanna do 3 o'clock? Is that what we're doing? Are we gonna do?
Let's do it at 1, but officially change it in that meeting to 1 so we can update the website.
Okay.
The meeting announcement will say 1 o'clock.
Okay.
No special meetings needed at this time or workshops? Not unless Justin comes back
Yeah, I was gonna say,
looking
it's-
like he,
it'd be whatever input he has that, but once the planning commission hands it off to the city council and it's in their grasp, I believe then the planning commission won't work on 14 anymore, at least the text that we adopted tonight. I would think that'd be city council function.
unless it turns out being a complete rewrite, which I highly doubt.
Okay.
I got a gun, man.
In case we're gonna have some resignations.
Okay.
I'm holding my breath on the health and sanitation one, though, that it
Uh,
might not come back a complete rewrite.
They rewrote the other one pretty good.
One thing, Lynn and I need to work out the minor discrepancies in that we still have left over in the table, the UBL table.
Yeah.
And should we announce it as a public meeting and invite anyone to come just record it? No one likely to come, it'll be extremely dull, won't it, Lynn?
Yeah, I think we need to have a public meeting and we'll have the recording going. We could do the Zoom if we would need to, but,
I would just do it, I think
What are
we
we
could just do
talking
an
about?
audio.
All right. that'll meet the requirement of the law. Do an audio
Yeah,
recording.
I mean,
We
if you-
announce we're meeting
Yes.
someplace, we can meet in here, for instance.
The meeting where we're gonna pass the ordinance?
No, we have to go through and compare my map to the table
And make sure the table's accurate.
as best we can.
Okay.
And
Understand that.
validation, work on validation.
Validation.
Linda's gone through, done her best work, I did my best work, and we need to validate the two match as best we can.
But I was working with Excel formulas that were very complicated, so it could have some errors.
No,
Not two pieces of property were correct.
Oh, good.
That's,
And just, I guess, as a point of interest, these two people have volunteered to, Lynn and Linda have volunteered to get with Regina at HICPC, I believe you've agreed, and, because our zoning configuration is, slightly different than the original HICPC configuration, and that ties into their assessment billing and stuff like that, I don't know what kind of database they use, but I could see where it's tied to like R1 and R2 and R3 and stuff like that. So, where there's differences, we need to decide if somebody needs to do something different. It may be that nobody needs to do anything different.
Well, I can explain a little bit of that, for the record. When the last assessor created the 2011 assessment of benefits, in fact, there's a big book, it's about 4 inches thick, and lists every property by UBL, unit block lot. And in that, next to that unit block lot, there's given a zoning code. And that's what he called it in the book, although HICPC can't do zoning, period. He called it a zoning code. And so it just makes it confusing. And they use the standard zoning codes that we're using here, that every city in Arkansas uses. And so, but yeah, those were never used for zones, they were used in the covenants, as you well know, and the covenants talks about them, and the uses in the covenants. And we've tried to, map as closely to the covenants as possible, but it doesn't cover some of those lots that weren't covered, came about later and stuff like that.
And even, and we've added some convention to our system, like, we don't just have an R1, we have an R1M and stuff like that, and that,
More detail.
it might be, it might be not worth worrying about, but Regina raised it as a question, and so it's worth, it's worth the effort to sit down and decide.
And when we present her with a table that's by unit block lot, that's just the way that their system is configured, by unit block lot, and, a zoning code and an assessment amount, so.
Right. So anyway, that little follow-up activity needs to happen. So if there's no other business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Linda moved to adjourn, do I have a second?
Second.
Jerry second, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.
So what do we do now?
twiddle our thumbs until 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock.
In the meeting.